Have you guys ever heard of the theory on how people who only speak English have a less developed brain?
No, I haven't heard of that because it doesn't exist. Hi, I'm Woody. I have a master's degree in linguistics.
My girlfriend's first language is Hebrew and my first language is French, meaning that we both communicate with each other's second language. But I feel like this has kind of caused some issues in our communication because English is a very simple language.
No, it's not. Languages are not more simple than other languages. There are some respects in which one language might be simpler. For example, English has simpler verb conjugations than most Romance languages, but there are many other ways in which English is much more complex. The only language you might really argue is actually a very simple language is the Piraha language, but that deserves a whole nother video.
And it doesn't have much depth, so it's kind of difficult to communicate emotions properly.
English has plenty of depth. I think the problem is maybe your depth in English isn't that great, which is fine. It's not your first language. I can't communicate emotions in Spanish the same way that I do in English because English is my first language. That does not mean that Spanish is a simple or less complex language. It's easier to understand nuances and little details in whatever your native language is. It doesn't matter if that's English or any other language.
Because studies have shown that the more complex your language is, the more developed your brain becomes, and it's easier to understand different nuances and emotions.
Some studies have shown that speaking more than one language actually results in lower intelligence test scores, although that was mostly problems due to the testing methods of the time. And there is some science to suggest that speaking multiple languages helps your brain in ways that being monolingual can't do. But to say that people who only speak English are simple-minded is completely false. First of all, no study says speaking a specific language means your brain develops less than others. I could see how someone might look at this headline and think it means speaking English means your brain is less developed, but what it is talking about is that when science studies languages and linguistics, most of the research is done on speakers of English. So the science itself is missing more research from other languages.
Don't come for me, come for the studies.
No negativity intended here, but I am going to come for you because there are no studies. Please give me those sources because I cannot find them. After studying a master's degree in linguistics, I've never heard of this. So where are you getting your information?
That would explain why IQs are so high in some Asian countries, for example, because they have some of the most distinguished dialects.
I say it 1,000 times in almost all my videos. No one dialect is better or more distinguished than another. They all formed through the same process of natural linguistic evolution.
Pretty sure I read somewhere that Mandarin and Arabic were the most complex language.
Mandarin is complex how? Please tell me. These are all the verb conjugations in Spanish for a single verb. This is one of the hardest things to learn when people study a Romance language because there are so many different conjugations. They conjugate for tense, for person, for number, for mood, for aspect. Mandarin has literally none of that. Not a single conjugation for their verbs. No plurals, no tenses, no pronoun conjugation. Tomorrow I go Beijing. Right now she go Beijing. Last year we often go Beijing. Please tell me how this is more complex.
English is the universal language for a reason. Like, it's pretty easy to learn. It's a very simple language with...
These are current or former British imperial claims. These are countries with US military presence. That's why English is used all over the world. It's not because it's simple. This map is from the Foreign Services Institute showing how long someone needs to study a language until they're proficient enough to have a job with the Foreign Services. It works the same way for people in these regions learning English. That's approximately how long it takes for them to get to that same level of English. If you're coming from a completely unrelated language that isn't Indo-European, then it's going to take you a really long time to learn English. It's not simple for everyone.
Not much nuance to it.
Not much nuance? These are different uses of the F word. Just one word has all these different uses, and there's a lot more uses than just the ones in this photo. Pause this and give it a read and tell me that English doesn't have nuances. If you don't think a certain language has nuances, you clearly haven't read enough poetry or puns.
Again, this is definitely an abusive generalization.
You're right, that is a very abusive overgeneralization. I would even go as far as to call it xenophobic. Neil deGrasse Tyson only speaks English. He's not simple-minded. The late great Stephen Hawking only spoke English even when he could actually use his mouth to speak on his own. Are you going to say these people's brains are less developed? Please show me the studies that you're looking at because I have never heard of that ever in my life.